Hello, welcome back to Sharks Happen. On today's episode, we are going to go over what I think is the smallest injury caused by shark teeth from a large shark on a human. I will link a picture of that to the video in the description, but we'll get into that when we get there. We're also going to go over a strange attack by a shark that seems to not be able to penetrate wetsuits very much. We've gone over the shark before, and this is another example, and I know of yet another example where that's the case. So, very odd shark. A couple of attacks on spear fishermen where they're pretty much circled the whole way back to shore. We'll go over that one, and we're going to finish out the show with the 1874 attack. I believe it's 1874, but we're going to get into the couple different versions. I think it'll be pretty obvious which version is probably more likely the truth of what happened or closer to the truth. And it'll be an example of why we don't do anything from the 1800s, because there's a little bit of shadiness going on. Not that there isn't in the early 1900s, but it probably was more prevalent in the 1800s. And we'll go over that at the end of the show. We got a great show. Stick around. Okay, we start out today over at Port Shepstone, and that is in South Africa, and the date is February 1st of 1959. Raymond Vermaak, he is 14 years old, and he is out doing some swimming with his friends. There's 4 other friends with him, and they're swimming, but there's about 100 people that are out swimming also, but they are on the south side of what they call a pool. So I'm thinking that there's some kind of a natural barrier that cuts most of it off from the open ocean, and most of them are swimming on the south side. Well, Raymond and his 4 friends are swimming on the north side, and they're swimming out there not too far from shore. I mean, Raymond ends up about 75 feet out, and they've already swam through a deep channel. Now, Raymond's currently at 245, he's 75 feet from shore, and he's holding on to a rock, treading water in about 6 feet of water. And his friends that were with him, they had swam out a little bit further, and a current came and took them out. So now they're 50 meters, they're about 60 yards away from him, further out to sea. Now, like I said, Raymond is holding on to a rock and treading water, and the shark, he said, came from the shore area, so it was coming at him from shore, and he's only 75 feet from shore. It was coming from shore, and he felt a couple of tugs, and then the water turned red, and a big dorsal fin in the shark surfaced right next to him, and he freaked out. Shark must have went on its way because it had removed his leg below the knee, and he was able to get himself to shore, the 75 feet into shore. The shark must have went on its way. Probably didn't bother the other people, and Raymond said that he might have had the shark bite his foot first and then tried to kick the shark, and then that's when it bit down and bit his leg off. He said it was a brown shark, a big brown shark, about 3 meters in length. So you're talking about a 10-foot shark, and being brown, I mean, you know, I don't know the bulls are brown. I know great whites have a brownish tint sometimes, and he says a kind of brownish color. I mean, could be a whaler, if you know, brownish, kind of copperish, orangish type of a color, but you know, you don't hear about brown sharks biting limbs off too much. So I would think either a whaler or probably a young great white got a hold of him. Doesn't sound like he got a very good look at it, except when it raised its body up to the side of him. In that kind of excitement, you're probably thinking about getting to shore anyway, so you take a real quick glance, and once you see what it is, you're out of there. So that's our story of Raymond Vermaak. He ends up losing his leg, but he does survive this attack. We don't know what kind of shark. We're going to put this down as an attack, not an attempt to predate. We don't know what kind of shark. Okay, we're going to head over to Sunday Cove. That is South Island, New Zealand, and the date sometime in December of 2012. Jenny Oliver, she is 25 years old. She was out doing some diving. Team of divers are diving down, and they're picking up kelp, or a weed. Sounds like an invasive weed in there. They wanted to get out of the water, and there's a team of them diving and taking this weed up out of the water. She's down in the water with her dive partner, which is Keena Scally, I think. Keena Scally, and well-known diver over there. Dives with sharks, I do believe, over in New Zealand. And the two of them are down, and they're doing some diving, and a shark shows up. About a 10-foot Sevengill shark. Not a very aggressive animal as far as sharks go, but it starts doing circling her. So it's circling Jenny, and it ends up, she can feel her tanks being bitten. So it's got a hold of her tanks and it's kind of jerking on them a bit, and it releases that, and then it goes out and it starts circling her again. Now she says she was worried about her hands, so she pulled her arms in to make sure she wasn't bitten in her hands. And again, when the shark got behind her, she could feel it grabbing the tanks again, so it's grabbing her breathing apparatus. When she feels it clamp on her head momentarily, and then her dive buddy punches it in the side and it goes on its way. She ends up with no injury whatsoever on this attack. They have a strange teeth, the Sevengill shark does, just some little pointy teeth in the top, not very long at all, maybe about 3/8 of an inch long, so less than a ½ inch long it looks like on the front. And in the bottom they have rows of, looks like teeth, but they have little serrations at the top that are really deep, and I think it makes them less likely to bite through things. At least it didn't seem to bite her with enough pressure to get through the suit, and I've gone through, maybe this is our second or third Sevengill attack, and there's no injury on those either. I do have one that we're going to get into that we're going to end the show with, where another gentleman, I believe he was bitten in the head, and he ended up with a cut to his face. Not bad cut, but he was bleeding a little bit. But not very bad attacks from such a large shark. 10 foot, you'd think it'd do much. I'll post a link to the jaws, a picture of the jaws, and then a picture of the jaws that are in a shark of the Sevengill. Sevengill kind of, to me, reminds me of the Greenland shark, one of my favorite sharks. It's really slow moving and not very aggressive, but I'm not sure on their teeth at all. I haven't really looked at those at all, so I just know that they can't swim very fast. A human could probably outswim them. So I think their top speed is like 2 miles an hour. So that's our attack. One other thing it reminds me of is that's James Oatley, and that's an attack I went over early on that happened in Florida. James Oatley is from England, and is bitten a leg, actually in the thigh, and it said that he was lifted up out of the water during the bite. Yet he didn't end up with stitches. He only ended up with shots and a bandage and sent home. I would think that if that's the case and that that's true, that it wasn't damage to the leg, it was probably a Sevengill that got a hold of him. But I'm not sure how many Sevengills are over there in Florida. I don't know where they hang out, basically. So right now, that's my biggest guess on that. That didn't do much damage to his leg, and all you would need is shots. I would think a Sevengill. So that's our attack. An attack, not an attempt to predate, by a Sevengill shark. Okay, now we're going to head over to Albion Cove, that is in California, and the date is July 26th of 1974. Robert Kehl, he is 36 years old. He and a dive buddy, spearfishing buddy, Mike, they are out doing some spearfishing. They've just tied their boats off above a shallow reef, and there's a rock that is in this cove, I believe, and it's normally inaccessible due to probably the tides and turbulence of the area, and they can actually get to it. So Mike stays with the boats, and now Robert swims off and he dives down and checks out this rock. He's looking around the rock, he doesn't see any fish, he's not able to spear any fish. He's free diving, spearfishing, so you hold your breath and you go down. It's about 40 feet deep. And he goes back to the surface now, and he is swimming along the top of the surface. He's been in the water about 45 minutes now, and he gets himself about 330 yards from shore in about 40 feet deep water, and he decides to dive down again and scout out the area. He dives down, looks around, doesn't see anything, starts heading up to the top. And normally he says that he does 360s to look around, but he's keeping his eye on a fish that he sees down there, or abalone, one of the two. He sees something and he's keeping his eye on that. He says suddenly he feels a pain in his foot, and he doesn't know what to think. He turns and he says he sees the 3-foot side of a shark. And he says he didn't know at first that it was a shark. It was so black on top he thought it might be an orca. So it sounds like it bit him and just let go and started swimming off. So as it's swimming by, he never sees the head of it or the dorsal. He just sees this huge side of it. He says he takes his 3-pronged spear and shoves it at the shark a couple times. He says the shark didn't even flinch as it just kept swimming on by. So one of those cases where the shark doesn't do anything, it's lackadaisical, goes ahead and bites him and just keeps going. It sounds like what happened here. He ends up stabbing the shark with that spear. Absolutely no effect whatsoever, you can tell. He gets back up to the surface, he's fine. He ends up with puncture wounds to his foot. Most of the blood was contained in his boot, so he probably didn't know how bad it was damaged because he couldn't feel it at the time. You know, the teeth are so sharp and probably interfering with the nerves. He couldn't feel any pain at the time, so he surfaces. He gets his foot taken care of. He thought that the shark was about, he said 3.5 to 4 meter shark, but they looked at the damage to his swim fin and the separation between the teeth, and they determined this was a 5.5 meter great white shark that grabbed him by the foot. You're talking 18 foot, 17.5, 18 foot shark grabbed him by the foot, and that's probably the best case scenario you could end up with there. Just a bite, probably saw the fin there and just reactionary bit it as it was swimming along. It obviously wasn't in any attack mode. As it just slowly swam by him, he was able to prod it after he saw what it was. I think it was just a bite because it was there. I don't think that this is even what you would call an attack. It definitely runs along the lines. H. David Baldrige saying so many percentage of the attacks, the shark does nothing out of the ordinary. It's just going along and it bites. Well, that's exactly what happened here. Put it down as an attack, not an attempt to predate by 5.5 meter great white shark, so 17.5, 18 foot great white shark. Okay, now we're going to head over to Great Mercury Island, New Zealand, and the date is January 13th of 2013. Kim Bade, he is out doing some spear fishing with a friend of his, Rob, and they swim out. They have just speared a fish and they've taken it and put it in one of their friends' inflatable boats. So they have the fish up out of the water, which is what you want to do as soon as you can. Get that fish up and out of the water and into something if you can. And they start swimming back out to their fishing spot. Now before they get to the fishing spot, Kim decides he's going to dive down. He goes down about 30 feet. So he swims down 30 feet and he says that he's looking around and he feels a nip on his left hand. He's looking the other way. His left hand is away from his body and he feels a nip, and reflexively he pulls his hand away. He turns expecting to see a fish, and what he sees is a 10-foot, 3-meter bronze whaler looking right at him. So the shark's looking at him. He goes ahead and pushes his spear at it and the shark goes away. Now he swims to the surface and tells his friend Rob about it. Now the shark returns and swims close by his friend Rob, about a foot, maybe 4 feet away from him, looking at Rob, and Rob is keeping it away with his spear gun, giving it a couple pokes. Now it disappears again, and the two of them, Rob and Kim, get together. And now the shark returns and they go ahead and get back to back. Both of them have their spear guns. They're back to back with each other. The shark is circling them close and they're prodding it a few times before the shark finally leaves and they're able to get up into their boat. Kim ends up with a wound from the shark. And I'll post a link to the video down in the description, to the picture. There's going to be a picture on the story, and the story's there. But I forget which finger it is. It's this finger. But it's a little cut. It's a little scratch that goes across the I have never seen where a shark's teeth have touched you when it wants to touch you, where there's such a small cut from a 10-foot, bronze whaler. That might as well be a 10-foot bull shark. They have the same type of teeth, I think, and it could do a lot. Take your finger right off. He was just lucky he was able to pull it away. You'd have to think if you were actually paying attention, you wouldn't be able to pull it away in time. Your reflexes just aren't that fast. I think because he wasn't paying attention, his system took over, and that's what saved his finger in the first place. Sounds like as soon as the teeth touched, he ripped that thing right out of there and gets a little tiny cut on him. And then they have to fend the shark off. We'll put this down as an attack, not an attempt to predate, by a 10-foot bronze whaler shark. Okay, now we're going to head over to the Loyalty Islands, and that is New Caledonia. The date, March 14th of 1999. Blaise Wouanena, he is out doing some freediving spearfishing, so you hold your breath, you go down. He has just dove down and he is ascending when suddenly he is hitting the back with such force he doesn't know what hit him. He gets hit in the back and he never even sees the shark. The shark ends up hitting him in the back hard. Open mouth, never closed its mouth. He has a ring, it sounds like, of shark teeth marks in his back. Some of them were almost an inch deep and almost an inch wide. So that's a triangle. That's a great white, if I ever heard it. That's what they say this ends up being. It ends up being a 30 centimeter circle. Some of the teeth punctured his lungs. Even though it only went in 2 centimeters, it was able to puncture his lungs. And the other 2 rows made it about 30 centimeters, so you're talking maybe 11-inch span. They tell you that it's a white shark. They tell you the weight, that it's like a 200 to 300 kilogram great white or whatever. And I'm like, well, what, a 9-foot great white is what I'm thinking it would be with that big of a mouth, 9 to 11 feet, somewhere in there. Probably a juvenile. Came up and rammed him in the back. He never even got to see it. He survives. They stitch him up. I didn't hear of any teeth fragments in him, but man, that's just crazy. And this is one of those attacks where it doesn't close the mouth. The attack we just went over just prior to this one, it could also be one where the shark didn't even close its mouth. I'm just assuming it was going to bite his hand, but it might have just had an open mouth and he touched the teeth and pulled it out, and it hadn't bit down on him yet. This one definitely didn't bite down on him, but you know, even when they can't bite down like on you, they will attempt it, which I thought back to the one diver that was crouching on the bottom of the water as he was picking up some shells, and the shark came down and clamped him on his head all the way down to his buttocks, and then it tried to close. A 20-foot shark, I do believe it was. Long time ago we went over this story, but they had scrapings going down and up his back from the shark trying to close its mouth, even though it had him by its head and his butt. I mean, that's a huge gap, and it still tried to shut. So this shark would have tried to shut its mouth if it wanted to. Put it down as an attack, not an attempt to predate. Probably total territorial on this shark's part. If not, he would have definitely seen the shark in the area. So that's our story of Blaise Wouanena. Attack, not an attempt to predate. We don't know what size great white shark. I would say 9 to 11 feet. You know, we're going to finish off our unprovoked attacks over at King's Cliff. That is in New South Wales, Australia. The date, June 2nd of 2016. Wade Madigan and Dr. Seyong Kim, they are out doing some spearfishing. They are quite a ways from shore. They didn't bring a boat. They swam out themselves. They're a kilometer off of shore, and they're by a reef, and they've shot 4 large mackerel. So they got 4 large fish they've shot. When they were fishing, they were seeing, they said they saw 8 whalers and 2 bull sharks that were hanging around in the reef as they were fishing. Now they're getting ready and they get their catch and they're starting to swim back to shore, and 2 large bronze whalers come up. And they thought it was kind of cool. The sharks are swimming around them a little bit, not messing with them at all. And they said the situation changed totally. A 3rd shark showed up, and this is a smaller bronze whaler, but it's the first one to have hit him. And after that first smaller shark went at them, which they were able to fend off, it would hit their fins, their guns, their spears, and they went ahead and would fend them off as they were coming in. And now all 3 sharks, as they were swimming around them, they said that the whole swim into shore, they left at 4:30 when they started being attacked. It took them till 5:30 to get into shore, but that's not the worst of it. The 3 sharks are making attacks on them here and there as they're swimming back in. Like I said, biting their fins, biting on their guns, biting on the spears, and they're able to fend them off without being injured. When they finally get into shallow water, they said things got intense. That the sharks, they bent their pectorals and they just started attacking as much as they could. So they're fending them off as much as they can. It takes them an hour swim. They get their way into shore. Neither one of them are injured in the ordeal. I don't think that the sharks even bothered with their fish. It sounds like they got their fish back in too. But it's crazy because these sharks went off when they got into shallow water, like they knew they were losing their opportunity to get them. Just like we went over a mako shark on a spear fisherman that did the same thing to him all the way back in. It would, you know, follow behind his bait line, which was a good 10 feet behind him, and the shark would just swim with its head waving back and forth just behind that bait and come up and try to attack him temporarily. But then it got into the shallows, and then he got out of the water, and that shark started acting like a mad shark in the kelp. They really want to bite you at times. I don't think this is an attempt to predate by any of these bronze whalers. I think it's more territorial. I don't think that they wanted the fish. I think they wanted them out of the water, but they definitely wanted to bite them. And you know, when a shark wants to bite you, it wants to bite you. And that brings me right back to David Lilienfeld, one of the worst territorial attacks ever, where he fended off twice with his board, and the third time the shark ended up ripping his leg off. And then the shark just swam around. It swam around the area as his leg and his body floated around. So that's a terrible territorial attack. But it shows you that when they want to bite you, they want to bite you. That's our attack on both Wade Madigan and Dr. Seymour. What was your name, Dr. Seyong Kim? That was the attack on the two of them. An attack, not an attempt to predate, on both of them. No injury by 3 bronze whalers. The largest ones probably, I would say, being in the 8-foot range, 10-foot range at the most. So they're very lucky to get out of there. Those spears and the gun sure helped out, and the fact you have a fin there, something falls for them to bite, helps out a little bit too, because otherwise they're biting on you and your foot, your leg, instead of getting that fin, the swim fin. So that's our story of them, and we will finish the show. Okay, I am back with the ending of the show. Today it's you don't hear that every day. Before we get into the end of the show, I just want to say both stores are open, the Etsy store and the website store, I guess we'll call it, sharkshappen.com. So both those stores are still open. Thank you everybody for your orders and all your great comments that you have, all the stories that you have in there. Just the people having a feeling that something's wrong creeps me out. So that's how much I don't like water, ocean water. I don't mind water. It's ocean water. So I just wanted to say that about that, and I want to tell you I'm going to put in the description below. I watched this National Geographic video, I believe it is, just a quick little 12-minute clip talking about these, I think it's off of North Carolina, and there's thousands, I guess, sand tigers all hanging out in a gang. Turns out most of them are females and most of them are pregnant. So it's a pretty good little clip to watch to see that gang of sharks. They call it a gang of sharks, and the other gang of sharks I think of when I think sharks is when you see those thousands of great hammerheads. I've seen those videos and they're awesome. Well, this is a cool video just to see so many sand tigers, and they're hanging out. That's a graveyard of the Atlantic, and they're hanging out in the shipwrecks. You know, they get protection down there, and it's a great place to hunt and a great place to stay. But they're thinking that they all stay together. They're trying to figure out why all these females are staying together right there, because they don't appear pregnant yet. I'm not sure that they're, you know, near where they give birth yet, because they don't look any different than I think a normal sand tiger that size would. So I'll put that in the description, and we'll get on with the end of the show here. Where was this at? It's February 15th of 1874, and it's in the Ellice Islands, E-L-L-I-C-E, and that's the islands I'm going to go with. They got a different name now, but there's 2 different versions of this. This is 1874. 2 different versions of this, and I've seen a couple different stories from both. I think the GSAF has 2 stories of both of them themselves, and one of them is that there was a fleet of canoes. They were going to go from one island in the Ellice Islands to another, and they were overtaken by a storm. No, doesn't say how many canoes. Overtaken by a storm, 70 people, they all end up in the water. 70 or 80, but I think it's 70 people end up in the water, and in this version, sharks are there, take care of most of the people. 2 people survive, one of them has shark bites. That's one version. This is 1874, mind you. Now, the other version, the one that I believe more than that, I don't think you're going to have a fleet of canoes. Being able to turn into a storm and head into a storm, you're not going to have that kind of power with oars in a canoe. This other version has this giant canoe. It sounds like kind of a catamaran-like canoe where they were both connected, and it had a huge sail on it. Now this you could turn into the wind. You could turn this into a storm with that sail, and you could keep into the winds. There's no way you're going to do it without some kind of power that it doesn't come from your arms. I don't care if you have an army of people that are sitting there in one of those big long boats trying to keep to you're not going to be able to do it. You need some kind of power that's working in your favor to be able to stay into the wind, and a sail will do just that. So the other story is a large canoe that's a double canoe that has 50, it says that they have 50 natives and 20 workers on board. I have also seen that this is about 40 people in total, which I more believe than 70. I believe it's probably more like maybe 30 to 35 people and 5 people running this boat. But nevertheless, the numbers are off on the two different stories. One says 70, one says 40. I'm thinking 40 is right. And then the storm hits and it overturns the boat. Now, in the overturning of the boat, it says that 20 are taken down immediately by that sail. That, I believe, most are going to drown in this situation. Sharks aren't going to be there just because boats are going across the water. They're going to, and most sharks that end up at wrecks, it's because of the noise. There isn't going to be much noise. I don't think there's not explosions, there's not oil, there's not the things that sharks, I think, connect to a sinking to where there's food. So this thing overturns, takes 20 of the people, however many there are, 20 of them drown underneath the sail. Others are in the waters, but it's in the stormy seas. Most of them drown. It does say some were bitten by sharks. It says one person survived to be able to tell the story. But no mention of dozens of people being eaten by sharks like I'm getting from these other stories. So what I think we had here, probably there was some feeding being done by some sharks on some drowned bodies is what I think might have happened. That gentleman in the one story where there was only one survivor spent 2.5 days out in the ocean before he made it to land or was rescued, either or, was able to tell his story. But I would think that it's probably around 40 people that were in this double canoe with the sail, and then when it was capsized, at least 20 of them, or nearly 20 of them, were taken down by that. And you got to figure some of them with bodies in those canoes and the wood itself, that some people are getting some head trauma through the flipping of the boat alone. So there isn't going to be that many people taken by sharks. I think people that were touched by sharks, it was probably after they had already drowned in the whole situation. I can't imagine sharks following, one boat over there like that. There's nothing for them, I don't think. Especially during a storm, I wouldn't think so. So we're going to put this down as not even an attack. We're going to consider this more or less a sea disaster where bodies were fed on probably after they had already drowned. With one survivor, that's our story of 1874. Even early 1900s, it's hard to take some of these stories at face value, which you always got to think, it's back in the day. It's back when they thought sharks were monsters. They used the word monsters and all these other things. So as the farther along we go in time, probably the more the story grows. And I think that's what happened here. So that's our story of the overturned canoes or canoe over in the Ellice Islands back in 1874. Now that that's out of the way, I'll give you guys just a little glimpse into a few more little stories. These are real quick. We'll be done with these. But me and my wife, our first date, we went to a theater, and this, back in 1994, I think it was. Huge pop we had. Get the huge pop and popcorn. We're in the 2 seats. The pop is in that holder between us. I reach over to get the pop. This is the first thing I do on my first date. Knock that whole pop over in her lap. The whole thing spilled. And, I didn't even want to look. I'm like and she started laughing, which is a good thing, because if you're going to be with me, you need to laugh at something like that, because things are going to happen. So another time we're driving. We used to go to, her mother was in Tennessee, and we would drive up to Tennessee. So it's sometime mid-90s. I think we're in her Mitsubishi Eclipse. Either way, I'm on the expressway driving back from Tennessee on 75 in the worst snowstorm I've ever driven in. I mean, this stuff was coming down. It was coming down so hard, it was caking ice on the windshield. And I don't remember, we were probably doing about 50, 55 miles an hour. The roads weren't too bad, but the snow was coming down. So now I'm gonna do the whole, pull the window down a little bit, and I'm gonna snap that wiper blade and snap that ice off my side. So I roll the window down, I don't know what she's doing. I reach out and I snap it once, and it knocks a little bit off the end, but that part down by the front, down by the bottom of the windshield, it's still got ice on there. So I'm gonna snap it one more time. It makes its way over, I snap it, I pull my hand back in and I look, and I'm holding the wiper blade. Now I kind of see out of my periphery, she ain't looking, I throw it out the window. Got rid of the evidence gone. So now I put the window up, and she's now looking at me. She doesn't know what's happened, but she knows something happened, because I don't have a poker face. My poker face is probably as good as Michael Keaton's in any of his funny movies. We just don't have them. You can read what we're thinking in our faces, and that's how it's always been. So she knows something's happened. I won't say it. She doesn't notice the snow collecting in front of me on the windshield, or the stick going back and forth in front of me. It wasn't, it didn't save much time throwing it out the window. I had to tell her, because I had to get off and get a new wiper blade on to drive the rest of the way home. So that's in some terrible weather driving. So we have this really sunny day. We're in sunny Florida. My father moved down to the Keys sometime, I think around 2009 or something, 2010. It's probably around 2010, 2011, we're driving down there. We're in my red Monte Carlo. I had a 2005 Monte Carlo. We're heading down there, and we're having the nicest time, the best drive. I mean, she hates to drive with me because I drive fast. She doesn't like how I pass people, because, she thinks that there should be more room or something. I don't know. I know everything I'm doing in the car is what I need to be doing, but she doesn't like it. So I've driven really calmly this whole way. We're having a great time. We're getting down there to, we're at one of the toll booths in the Keys, so we're on the turnpike, which heads to the Keys entrance. So we're at the toll booth, and now it's $3 for the toll. This is 2010. She's got a baggie of quarters, because she knew we were going to go through. And usually, it's got the change on there, so you need the quarters to be able to not have to get change. So she just hands me $3 in quarters, because it's on the even number, and she doesn't need to change because it's an even number going down. So I take $3 in quarters. I got 12 quarters, and I got them in between I put them in between my left hand, finger, and thumb. Now, right off the bat, she tells me, don't drop those. I'm like, I ain't gonna drop. Again, she has to do that jinx and stuff that she does. I ain't gonna do that. My window's down, we're having a good time. And I look over, I'm holding on to the quarters, my window's down, and I look over, and there's one of those cement dividers off walls off to the side there. And I look over, and there's two birds. I don't even know what kind of birds. They're decent sized birds, nothing huge, nothing small, but they're just sitting there, and they're kind of looking in my direction. So I give them the Joey from Friends. Hey, how you doing? As soon as I get done saying that, the bird on the right leaves, and he starts flying right at me. I mean, fast. And as quick as I can, I go to hit my it's electronic windows. So I'm raising the window. There's no time. This bird is it's on me and over the window before it even gets halfway up. But I got to try anyway. Well, so I take the quarters. And because I hit it with such force, worried to get that window up before that bird gets to me, the quarters hit the corner there of that little arm they have sticking out there where you can rest your arm if you wanted to. Quarters hit, and they're flying everywhere. I just see an explosion of quarters as I'm still trying to get up the window. I can see the quarters out of my periphery, but I'm keeping my eye on that bird that's almost at me. I swear, as soon as the bird is right at the car, it goes up and just over my hood. So now I can relax a little bit. I get the window up. I'm being yelled at from this side. I hear, who holds quarters like that? So I throw back, who in 2012 brings a baggie of quarters to go through toll booths? So we're arguing, and as we're arguing, just a couple lines at each other, that bird lands on my windshield wiper, just looking right in at me, knowing he got me in an argument, sitting there looking at me, admiring his work. So, you know, that's a couple of the weird things that happened, a couple little driving things in our first date little story. I appreciate y'all being here. Love the show. I can't wait to get going on this year. Hopefully, last year I got a show done like around the same time this year because I was getting over COVID and then I got a cold. I mean, I got a flu right after that. So if I can fend that off, I got a pretty good tan still. I still have tan. So that means I still have vitamin D working in my favor. Not going to get down to Florida, to the Keys until the end of February for that show. So I'll be at the Nautical Flea Market in Florida in Isla Mirada, which is at Founders Park. That'll be February 25th and 26th, just next month. So I hope to see some of you there. But remember, if you go into that water, you are much more afraid of those sharks than they are of you.